Okay, so in the last session, what we did actually, we have went to let me quickly walk you through the scope for everyone's sake. So scope we used whenever we want to import data from any traditional databases, we will go for scooping, right? And so when we talk about scoop, we talk about few commands. The most important thing is the address of the source database. And to connect to the source database, we'll start with ---- connect parameter, and then we'll give the JDBC driver and user ID and password, right? And then in a scoop, what we can do, we can connect to database and we can run command as we are running the command into the database, and that's we are calling it as eval command. So for example, let me cover eval command quickly first again. So when we go here, so yeah, so here's my MySQL database, right? So if I run any command here, select star from categories, or let's say select count star from categories. So what this command will give me, it will give me how many rows are there in categories table, right? So let's say, and this command I'm running in MySQL. If clearly it is mentioned here that's MySQL, right? If I want to run the same command into Scoop to get the same exact output onto the terminal, onto the Scoop terminal or onto the normal terminal. See this, if I want to have the same output here without jumping or connecting the MySQL terminal, what I will be doing, I will go here and I will run something like this. Select count star from categories. So what this command did, without even I logged in to the MySQL directly, I connected to MySQL from this terminal to this terminal. So this is my MySQL terminal, right? And this is my Cloudera Quick Start VM terminal. See the exact, we almost exact result we came here without even logging to the MySQL terminal. So let's say, and if I'm repeating the same concepts again, so whenever you want to import data from any MySQL or any RDBMS database system, you need to know few things, right? First thing, what you need to know is how many rows are there into the database, how many columns are there, what is the schema. So let's say if I want to know what is the schema of the categories table, so what I will be doing here, and this is I'm in Cloudera Quick VM terminal. So I'll say describe table name. So what it's gonna be doing, it will tell me the exact the schema or the structure of categories table. See now it, and again I'm emphasizing on the point that I'm not in MySQL database. I'm on Quick Start VM. When I go to the MySQL database, the terminal will be start from MySQL. See this thing, right? I'm here. I'm not in MySQL. So even though I'm not in MySQL, I can see the result on the Quick Start terminal using eval command, right? So this is the functionality of the eval command. Okay. One more important thing which I need to show you here. So what exactly is what we can do using eval command is to see the number of rows, describe the tables, anything. For example, if I need to show even the first few rows of the data, so what I will be doing, I'll simply run select star from categories, and let's say we need to show the first 5 rows, limit 5. So it will show me the number, top 5 rows of the categories table. See, okay. So this is the major functionality of eval command. Okay, but obviously, see why we are doing this. why we have a tool of scooping, right? We already have the data into the MySQL database. Then why we are bringing the data into Scoop? That's a big question, right? We already, for example, let's say if I go here quickly, right, into the MySQL database, I can run any command, like whatever command I'm running there, I can run those commands here, right? I can run any command here. Then why we are going to run the same command into, and even here the commands are running faster in MySQL database, right? Then why I'm running those commands in Scoop, and why I'm importing data into SDFS? The answer is, there are two types of system, right? One is called OLAP and one is called OLTP. So when we talk about OLTP systems, and let me write it down here for you guys in a new database. So there are two kinds of system, right? And this is not related to Scoop, but it will make sense if you understand this thing. So there are two types of system, OLTP and OLAP. When we talk about OLTP, that's transactional system. Transactional. And these are analytical systems. So by transactional system, I means the system which we update on real-time basis. This system will be updated on real-time basis. So it means we're gonna be inserting rows, updating rows, and even deleting rows on real-time basis. So let's say you have your bank account, right? You go to the ATM, you withdraw some money. So what exactly is going on behind the scene? That your transactional table called balance will be updated on the real-time basis. Let's say you withdraw $100, then your balance will be dated by $100 on real-time basis. Am I making sense? But let's say if I want to analyze how much amount or what is the transaction type, which ATM you went to, which city you went to, what kind of customer you are, this kind of analytics if I want to do on each customer, can we do it on OLTP system? No. We need to go, and there are reasons why we cannot do it on OLTP system. Why? Because these systems are only made for real-time ingestion, updation, or deletion. If we use them to run the analytics query, then these three operations might become slow and the end customer might be impacted. So what we usually do, when this transactional data has been stored into the OLTP system, we bring the batches, where we bring the batches into OLAP system, just for the analyzing, like just to see the trend, which ATM in Miami are busy, which ATMs are not used properly, which ATMs are running out of the money. Like this kind of question, if somebody want to ask, then they will go to OLAP system, and then we can run very time-taking queries, and it will not have any effect on this kind of system, right? But to bring data into OLAP system, we need some software which can bring transactional data into OLAP data, and one of the software is Scoop. Now if I'm making sense, right? So Scoop is a software which will bring data from traditional RDBMS system to SDFS, just for the sake of analysis. We can do analysis using MapReduce framework, or maybe by Spark, or maybe other framework, so it won't impact the OLTP system. That's the first thing, right? The second thing is, now the question arises, why do we need OLTP system? Why we cannot insert data into Hadoop directly or into SDFS directly? What is the reason? Like, what's the reason that why we cannot have the direct integration between your transactional system to the SDFS? The reason is Hadoop, and right, Hadoop is a distributed system which is meant for analytical purposes. In Hadoop, the reading and writing are not that fast. They are meant for their long-running queries. They are not as quick as traditional systems, and that's why we have OLTP, like Oracle what are the different OLTP system in the market? Oracle, SQL Server, and even MySQL, and many more, right? So this is the thing, and that's why Sqoop came in picture, right? Now, when we want to import data for analytics in OLAP systems, let's say Hadoop or HDFS, or maybe let's say in Hive, Spark, or whatever, what are the different inputs which we need to have? The first thing is how many rows we want to import. How many rows, right? Second, what is the data type, right? What is the data type? There can be a number of questions, but these are the two important things. The first, the how many rows will define what is the volume of the data, right? And the second, what is the data type? The variety of the data, or something, what is the type of the data which we need to import, right? So when I go here again, now it will make more sense to you. So what I'm doing here with this command, right? This is telling us the type of the data which we are importing. We are importing 3 columns: category ID, category department ID, and category name, and which have different data types like integer and varchar, right? What is the volume of the data? We are bringing 60 rows from MySQL categories table to HDFS, right? Now, what our data looks like? Like our data looks like this. The category ID will be of integer. Obviously, we need to know from here. But what the category name will look like? Category name will look like football, soccer, basketball, right? Different kind of stuff. So this is the purpose of eval command, to analyze the data before importing it, right? But what is the major function? The major function is to import the data from MySQL database or from any ID-based database to HDFS. And that's where Sqoop import command will come in picture. Let's go there in a Sqoop command now. So when you go for eval command, the easy command is this, Sqoop and eval, right? When we go for import command, eval will be replaced by import, right? And everything will be same, exactly same. So till here, everything is same. But when we talk about importing, right, where do we need to import? The question arises, where do we need to import? See, everything is very, very, related to common sense. When we talk about eval command, do we need to tell Hadoop that, okay, where do we need to show the result? No, by default, the result will be shown to terminal. That's why when you see here, there is no output. There is no output here. Output will be on terminal. But when we talk about import will needs to be go to some directory, onto HDFS. And that's why we need to mention one parameter called target directory. And we need to give the target directory here, right? And one more thing is we need to say table as well. Here we can say query as well, but right now, if we want to bring the whole table into the HDFS, then we can say table, right? So let's say we want to run this command. Let me cover one more thing. So when I started the Hadoop classes, I told you that Hadoop jobs are long running jobs. They may run for hours, maybe for 24 hours. That's why the default functionality of Hadoop jobs is, if directory is already exists, then we won't be deleting them. But if we want to delete the directory, target output directory, then we will be having some parameters called delete target directory, this one. So let me copy this job and run it for you. Meanwhile, this job is running. Let me cover a few more things on the back. So when we say delete target directory, what this command will be doing behind the scene? It will check the target directory. If the directory exists, it will delete it. If it doesn't exist, then obviously it won't do anything. At least this parameter, So in this case, into my case, the target directory exists there. Okay, table does not exist. Okay, 1 second. Oh wait, sorry, I missed the space here. So 1 second, sorry. Yeah, now it's run fine. Okay, no. Actually, one more mistake is there. Won't run. Yeah, actually, what I was trying to do here, I will cover that concept later. So I will cover it later. Not will run. Yeah, so it's running now. So what exactly a scoop command will do, and even I tried to cover it in the previous chapter. Whenever we run a scoop command, it will first see the metadata, what we have seen using eval command, like this. It will first see the metadata of the table, right? And then it will, using this metadata, it will write a MapReduce job to run the MapReduce onto the table to bring data into SDFS, right? So here, if you see, it created a jar, Java archive. Behind this Java archive, there will be a MapReduce code written by Scoop on behalf of us. It will connect to the databases. By default, there will be 4 mappers. So there will be 4 threads reading data from category table directly, right? So if you see here, and one more question, I'm repeating the last lecture's concept. The Scoop is map only jobs. So what Scoop is doing, Scoop is just copying data from source database to SDFS. So there is no reducing what we are doing. That's why Scoop job will only be MapReduce job, map only job. Okay, it will run, I know, this time. So we have covered this delete directory. So it means if there is a directory exists, we will delete it for sure. And so the job won't fail because of the directory exists, right? By default, the number of mappers are 4. But let's say if we want to control the number of mappers based on the volume of the data, right? So what is the best way to control it? This parameter, -m. Let's say if I want to have 1 mapper, we can have 1 here. So what this will do, it will only create 1 mapper, and it will only produce 1 output file. So what is the and let me cover one more topic here. What is the relationship between number of mappers and number of output files? So number of mappers, num mappers, equal to number of output files. And these files are intermediate files. If it is map only job, they are final files. For in the Scoop, they will be final file. But if it's MapReduce job, these files are intermediate files. But into a Scoop, they are number of the output files. So we have 4 mappers. We have 4 output files behind the scene. If we have 1 mapper, we have 1 output file behind the scene. So let's see quickly. So this job has been successfully ran. And let's go here, Control-C. And where we brought the data, we haven't brought it to the local memory, or local operating system. We bring it to the SDFS. And that's where if we want to check this data, we will always go for Hadoop FS. Means we are checking in Hadoop file system, and then we will check the directory. I'm covering last lecture's concept in more details, so bear with me. So if you see here, we have 4 output file created, right? So why 4 output file? Because by default, number of mappers is 4, and therefore number of output file is 4. Now let me show you one more thing. If I say -m1 and I'll run it again, it will obviously rewrite this directory because I use the delete directory parameter here. So now this, if I go to this directory after 1 minute when this job is completed, I will only see map 0000. Let it run and we'll commit to plate. Okay. So this is covered, right? Number of mappers and all. And now the question arises, how many mappers we need to be deciding, right? How many mappers we need to put in -m parameter? The exact answer is, it depends on your configuration. So if you have, let's say, 64 cores available, if you have enough memory, if you want to pull data from source database in a quicker way, then you can have 8 mappers. But at the same time, what exactly is going on? So what exactly is going on, that you are here and here's the database, right? So you are not the only one who is connecting to the database, and database has some limitation how many people or how many parallel connection can be there. Let's say if you have capacity to have 100 connection, right? If you have resources to have 100 connection to database, does it mean that you can have 100 connection to the source database? No, because at the same time there are other people who will be connecting to the database. So ideally in production environment, your team and database team will be deciding these factors, how many parallel connections you can have to the source database. Obviously, the resourcing of Hadoop or HDFS or MapReduce number of cores is the deciding factor, but this is also the deciding factor, that how many parallel connections will we have with the database at a certain point of time. Okay, so let's see if our job is successful. Our job is successful, right? So let me run this command again, and ideally there will be only one file with part-time 000 or something. See, so why we have only one file here now? Because I gave -m1. So it means I only gave one mapper. So the number of mappers is equal to number of output files in the scope, and therefore here only one file is there. Okay. If I'm going too fast, please let me know in chat box, Okay, so this is good. Okay, one more thing, if you guys came to know here, that here. So in my scoop command, what I'm giving here, that I'm giving target directory, and I'm hard coding tables name here. For example, let's say I'm importing table categories, right? And then I'm giving categories table here. So let's say if I import orders table, sorry, not here. Let's say if I import orders table here, right? It will still import that table into categories directory, because the the directory is hard coded here, right? But in industry, obviously there are thousands of tables which you need to import. Will you guys will be writing the directory name hard coded here? No, that's not the industry best practice, right? And that's where the Hadoop developers or the Scoop developers came to know about this problem. So they came up with the approach, right? They said, no, you guys do not need to hard code the directory name every time. What you guys can do, delete this, let Scoop decide which directory it need to create, but instead of target directory, mention warehouse directory here. Warehouse directory. Okay, so let me run this again. So ideally, if you see here, I didn't give any directory name, right? So if I run this command with only one mapper, what ideally this should be doing, it should create a directory inside this directory, my first scoop import with name orders. Let's see. Okay, so meanwhile this command is running, let me cover one more thing here. So there are two types of import directories, right? So one is called target directory. Here you will hard code the directory name. So let's say you have 4 tables, then you need to put 4 directories: D1, D2, D3, and D4. One more thing is called warehouse directory. Warehouse directory. When we mention warehouse underscore directory, you just need to mention the parent directory. Let's say directory one, and here it will put table name. So let's say we have 4 tables. It will put table name dir1, dir1, table 2, dir3, sorry, dir1, table 3, and this table 1, table 2, table 3, table 4 will be putting automatically by scope, and that's what warehouse directory parameter is doing for us. Let's see. It's taking time. Meanwhile, let's see a few more things. Okay, so it will run in 1 minute. Meanwhile, let me cover a few more things. So warehouse directory, target directory is clear to you guys, right? If you guys have any doubt, please ping me here in chat box or even unmute yourself and ask me, okay? So now the question arises, what is the default format in which Sqoop imports the data? The default format is text file, right? But text file is not very compressed. It uses hard disk a lot, right? So let's say if we want to compress the data, or if we want to import the data into compressed way, there are few ways, right? The first is we can mention the data or the file type in which we want to import the data. If we want to import the file into Avro data, then we can mention as Avro data file. If we want to mention, if we import the data into schema or sequence file, we can mention sequence file. There is one more switch, that's Parquet file. But there is other way in which we can compress the data. That's called -compress. I'll cover it in 2 minutes, okay? Okay, so this has been run. So what I was covering here, if you see the command, I didn't mention the directory name. Here, if you see, here only my parent directory is here. But ideally, if this command is successful, I should have orders directory inside it. So let's see quickly. So I will see here. So categories should be already there. Now let me run it. See, so categories was already there, but now it created this directory just now, last directory. Makes sense, right? And this is where we are using warehouse directory. In most of the cases, we can, if we want to pull data, we don't want to create directory manually, we will go for warehouse directory. Okay, and if I go inside this file, we will have only one file because the number of mappers we have put 1. So there will be part M00005 something. Let's see quickly. Perfect, right? So till now, am I clear? The data type of this file is, let's say if I go for this file, it is human readable file. You can read this file, like you have 60 records in this 60. No, I'm not sure how many records in the order table, but it will be human readable file. See, right? So now let's say if I want to import this file as Avro file, right? So what I can use here, I can use a switch called as Avro file. It will run, and obviously it will be Avro file, but let's cover other sections till the time this command is running, right? So I was telling you one more thing, that if I want to import the text file in the compressed way, I can say compress, -- compress. So when this command will run, I will use that flag as well, okay? I have covered this section in great details in the last lecture that if you want to have your error log or your output into some output file, then you will have, you know, the redirection tracks. I will show this example with other details. Let me show you now. So let it run. In fact, somebody asked me in last class that why do we need these flags, right? And that's a very good question. So these flags, for example, the most important flag is 2. We will use 2 like this. So our scoop import command, scoop hyphen import some parameters, and then what we'll be doing at the end, we'll put something like this 2 with the greater than sign, and then the error log file, error underscore log dot log, and it will give all the error log what we have. For example, let's say connection string is not working or something is not working into error log file. I'll show that in detail with some other example, right? Okay, it's taking too much time. Can we import multiple tables? Yeah, I will show you now. Okay, so we can import any number of tables. So first of all, let me show you here. Somebody asked me this question, you know, that can we import multiple tables? Yes, we can import any number of tables, but let me show you this thing. So now, when we run this command, it was text file, right? Now, if I run this command, it will be Avro file. Let's see quickly. See now. Why? Because we imported, when I run the import command, I put the flag as Avro data file. See this thing, right? So to answer your question, yes, we can import multiple tables. We can import all the tables. Scoop import all tables is the command. Okay, I won't be running it because obviously I don't have that much resources on my laptop, but we can run it. Let me show you one more thing, right? When I run the eval command, right? Yeah, this one. So let's say if I want to have this output, if I want to have this output into some file. So let's say output underscore log dot txt. If I want to have the output of this file into this file, okay. So if I just simply run this command, so what this flag is doing, this is not a Hadoop related command, this is Unix command. It will put the output of this file. See here, the eval command output is not came to terminal, right? Why? Because the output went to this file. So let me run this command, ls-ltr. There should be a file of output log.txt here. We can see a file here. Then if I vi this file, sorry, output, see the output now, right? So this is the beauty of those commands, you know, that, and these files we can send it to anyone. Let's say if you want to tell, okay, this type of data exists in this table to different team, we can pass these files, we can email these files, right? Okay. So now we have covered this thing. Error log also work in the same way. I just showed you the output log, but error will work in the same way. I have showed you Avro data file. I have showed you output.log. And even I have covered this thing, right? So whenever the scoop command runs, right? So how scoop is deciding which mapper will, so I told you, right? Here you are, here is the database. You have 4 connections with the database. Which connection get which type of data or which rows of data, how scoop is deciding it. Like here is mapper 1, here is mapper 2, here is mapper 3, here is mapper 4. Which mapper will get what rows? Who will decide it? It will decide it by the boundary value condition. So when scoop runs, right, scoop, first what scoop will do, scoop will see the metadata, right, and it will create a jar. That's a Java archive code, like MapReduce code. And then one more important thing what scoop is doing behind the scene, it will go to the Sqoop, this database. It will query, let's say we are having imported orders table, right? And let's say order table by default, it will directly query the minimum number and the maximum number of the primary key. So let's say we have 1000 rows in the orders table. Then what it will do? It will say 1 is the minimum, 1000 is the maximum, and then it will say 1 plus 1000. How many mappers are there? 4. So in ideal case, 250 rows will go to each and every mapper. Like 1 to 250 will go here, 251 to 500 will go here, 501 to 750 will go here, 751 to 1000 will go here, in this way, right? But question arises, one more question. If, and that's what I covered in the last section as well. If we have outliers means, let's say we have 1000 rows in the table, right? But thousands rows are like this, 1 till 980, and then in fact 999. First 999 rows are from 1 to 999, but the last row is 1 million or something like this. So what Sqoop will do now? Sqoop will do like this: 1 plus, this is the minimum key, this is the maximum key, something like this, and divide by 4, right? So what it's gonna be doing? Let me use the simple mathematics. Let's say 10,000, right? So now this is 10,000. So now what it will do? It will divide 2,500 rows in each mapper. So 1 to 2,500 will go to first mapper, 2,500, 1 to 5,000 will go to next mapper. But if you see, since we have only 1,000 rows, in reality, these two mapper will get all the rows. Mapper 3 and mapper 4 will run empty, although they are using all the resources, but they won't pull anything. And this is what we call outliers, right? This is what we call outliers. Now the question arises, how do we need to work with these outliers? Can we write? And why outliers are coming? Because Sqoop is using minimum and maximum number from categories table or from any tables. Can we define this minimum and maximum number by manual overriding? Yes, we can. And that's where we are using boundary query or something, boundary val query. Okay, let me see. I don't remember exactly. One second. So Control F. Yeah, so we can mention something like boundary query. Let me show it to you guys. And I'll put it for you here. So this is called boundary query. So let me show the example. So here in categories table, I'll show you now. CATEGORIES. Okay, so let me go to MySQL first. If you see here, I have 60 rows into the table, right? But the 2 rows which I created for you guys are 80 and 90, right? Even let me do one thing. I will put one more row with 900. Okay, so let me put one more row as 900. I'll insert it. Now if I show you guys, so I have 61 rows, one is the outlier. So in this scenario, what it's gonna be doing, 900 divided by 4, so it will be around 220 or something, right? 225, right? So for the last mapper will be, even let's do one more thing. So we'll put 10,000 here, just outlier. So now I put one major outlier here. So we have 62 rows. So all the rows will go to one mapper, the first mapper. So let's run this command. Let's run this command and let's run with mapper 4. So what's gonna be happening that this command will run for 4 mappers, but only one mapper will be working on the behind the scene. 3 mappers will run empty. Let's run it. Okay, meanwhile, let me copy this command for you. Copy. Let me paste it here and use the boundary value condition. So in this case, if I need to use boundary value condition, right? So I'll put something like here's anywhere we can put boundary value condition query. Select, and I know from the database that I have only 58 rows which are of my use, right? Select 1, 58. Even let me run this query first. Select 1, 58. See, so I have 1, 58 here, right? So it's there. So what it's gonna be doing? The boundary value condition, it will have the first column as minimum, second column as maximum, right? So now if I put this query into as a boundary value condition into my query here, and I will copy this. So let it run, then I'll show you. So basically, I'm overriding defaults boundary value condition, which this created. Now let me show you here. So where is that thing? Yeah, see now, this part, right? So what it did, split size is 2499. So split size, it has 4 mappers, right? So it has 4 splits because I have number of mappers as 4. So it has 4 splits. In each mapper, it distributed 2499 rows, but in reality, we have only 61 rows, right? So all the rows will go to first split. That is, all the rows will go to the first mapper. All the 3 mappers, like mapper 2, mapper 3, and mapper 4, will have no rows. Okay, so let's see now. It's running. And that's the only reason it is taking a lot of time, because only one mapper is doing real work and all the 3 mappers are sitting idle. Okay, so let's what is the table name? Categories, right? So CATGORES. See now. So I have 4 files, right? And see the output. Only one table or only one file has all the records, and other files have no records, right? And this is why we need to make sure that we are using boundary value condition if they're outliers. Let me show you now boundary value condition. I have copied it here, somewhere here, Control C. I'll paste it here and I'll run it now. And this is how we can override the boundary value condition. Let it run and let me cover the next sections. So the boundary value condition clear to you guys, right? Let it run. One more thing is, right now what I'm doing when I'm importing data, I'm putting table name here, right? I'm putting table name here, and the table and the data has been pulled from this table directly. But let's say if I want to pull data as a join from 2 different tables, what I can do here, I won't be running this query, it will take time, but I can import table using query clause, right? I can write query and I can write my SQL query inside the select clause. In fact, if I'll show you guys in 1 minute. If this runs quickly. Okay. So we have covered this. One more important thing which I need to cover from there is, so if we are not, let's say if we have a table called orders, right? And in the orders we have, this is our table orders, and our primary key is order underscore ID. So by default, and I have showed you it multiple times, by default the split has taken place using this order ID only. Scoop will take the minimum order ID, maximum order ID, and it will split based on that into each mapper, right? But let's say if we want to split on any other column other than order ID, then Scoop has provided us a parameter called split by, split underscore by, and we can tell Scoop, no, don't go for order ID, go for maybe order number, and it will take that order ID. It won't take order ID, and it will take the order number. Okay, and we will use this number when we see lot of outliers somewhere, you know, and we see that okay, this other column has no outliers and it's suitable for our requirement. Okay, so let's see if that run properly. Yeah, it's running. I was showing you the boundary value condition. Let me go here, and I have hard coded the boundary value condition, right, with 1 and 58. So yeah, so number of split is 4, and number of records is 58. See this. Okay, so boundary value condition works in, and one more question. Let's say we have no primary key, right? In the table we have no primary key. These are interview questions. Okay, we have no primary key. Can we still import the table into Scoop? The answer is yes. But what we need to do, we need to mention split by clause, right? Split by clause, right? Now the interview will ask, if we don't want to mention the split by clause, what is the other way? We can mention number of mapper as 1. Then also, if there is no primary key, see what is the purpose of the primary key is to split the data into multiple mappers, right? Max, min divided by 4 number of mappers or something, right? So if we have no primary key, the split won't take care. But if we don't want to split the data, then we can say, okay, number of mapper is 1, then it will taken care, right? But the question arises, we have 400 tables. Out of these 400 tables, we have 280 tables in which we have primary key, and 120 tables we have no primary key. So for these 120 tables, we have mapper is equal to 1 by default because we don't know how to split it. But for these 280 tables, we want number of mappers should be 4. So how can we make sure that for non-primary key tables, we have mapper is equal to 1. For the primary key tables, we have mapper is equal to 4. There is an option called auto reset to 1 mapper, this one. So what these options do, if there is no primary key, rather than failing your Scoop job, it will, if we have hard-coded number of mapper is equal to 4, it will by default degraded it to the number of mapper 1. So it will auto reset to 1 mapper if there is no primary key. Am I making sense? And this is most important parameter when you work with the multiple tables and you don't want your Scoop job to be failed. Okay. Till now, what we are doing? Till now, we are importing data into SDFS, right? And as I told you, why we are importing data to SDFS, so that we can analyze that data. And I haven't covered the Hive yet, but Hive is a data warehousing solution. Hive is a data where housing solution for Hadoop. So for data warehousing, we use Hive. So let's say we imported data till now in HDFS, right? We have directories. Now to analyze this data, we will import it or we will create Hive table over this HDFS. Now the question arises, why we need to import data to HDFS? Why can't we import data directly to Hive? And Scoop developers listened to us and they said, okay, if you want to analyze the data, you can directly import data to Hive. You can directly import data to Hive, right? And that's called Hive import. I should have somewhere here. Let me show you. 1 second. Yeah, this one. So what this command is doing, it is, forget about this thing. I will cover this maybe in later section. So what it's doing, it is importing table categories with mapper1. And when we say Hive import and Hive table, so the table name is test, what it will be doing for me, it will import data directly to the table test. It will create a table test for me in the Hive database, and it will put all the contents of the categories table to the test table. In fact, let me run it for you. In fact, let me run this thing only for you, just to make sure that it only works. Okay, 1 second. So when you import data in Hive, right? So you can have everything, but you cannot have delete target directory, and you cannot have warehouse directory, because obviously Hive will be doing everything for you behind the scene, right? So I'll paste that thing here. I'm not sure whether it works. Let's try. So you have Hive import, Hive table, number of mappers 4, boundary value condition. Let's see. So what it's gonna be doing, it will create a table test. Okay, so what it's saying, Avro data file is not compatible with Hive import. So I'll delete this. Let it run in 2 minutes. Yeah, it's working. So it will run for another 2-3 minutes. Meanwhile, let me cover other topics. Can you please zoom in the terminal? Yeah, let me try. 1 second. How to zoom it? Any idea, guys? Like this.
You can do it near the terminal.
It's fine now.
You can like just zoom in using the terminal. And the terminal will have options on the top.
On the top. File.
In the view.
Zoom in this. Oh yeah, this one, right? Okay, perfect. Okay, and one more question then: how to come out of it? Control Alt or something. Okay, let it be. So let it run, and then I'll show you the Hive table. One second, okay. So what it is doing, it is creating a Hive table for you behind the scene, and it is pulling data from categories table to your Hive table, and we call the Hive table at test. Okay. One question: how to come out of this now? Like, how to go to the local system? Okay, so see here now this thing, right? So loading uploaded data into Hive, these 3 lines, right? So it is doing everything from categories table, and it is loading into Hive now. And this is where it loaded. Okay, so let me go here and Hive. This is Hive, right? So I have one table here, test. I dropped it just for you. And if I run this select, so I already have all the table, only 58 rows. Why? Because I have put the query value condition, boundary value condition, right? Okay, yeah, this one. So this is the way. Okay, so now Hive is clear to you guys, right? That Hive import. Let's say if we don't want to import the full data, we just want to copy the metadata, then there is one property. We can only say create Hive table. It won't pull the metadata, or it won't pull the data, it will just pull the metadata. It will just pull the structure with the empty table. Okay. Now a few more important things which I need to cover today. So let's say you have a table, right? And transactional table will have the load every day. For example, if you are a bank customer, you can buy things every day, right? And so let's say if I want to pull data from banking table to some SDFS, then there are two ways. Either I can pull this banking table full every day. So let's say if I have 1 million row on 6th of June and 25,000 transaction takes place on 7th of June, by end of 7th of June, how many records are there? 1,025,000, right? So ideally, how many records I need to pull into the system? I only need to pull 25,000 records, because if I pull those 1 million record again, it will take lot of efforts, lot of resources. And if I pull all 1,025,000, this full record, this is called full reload or full load or something, you know. But if I just pull this 25K, this is called incremental load. And in industry, in 90% of cases, we only go for incremental case, and that makes sense, right? Why we need to go for 1 million record if they already have in SDFS on 6th of June? On 7th of June, only 25,000 records takes place, then only we need to pull 25,000, right? So this is called incremental load, right? Now one more question, right? So these 25,000 record which have occurred on 7th of June, there can be n number of records. Let's say new customer created, right? So this is a new record. Let's say the old customer updated their address. So this is the existing record, but he updated their address. So this is the updation record. So now if we talk about incremental, right? Forget about scoop. How we can make sure that first record is incremental? So we have a customer ID, we have customer ID, and we have customer ID on 6th of June from 1st to 1 million. So we have these many records on 1st of June, on 6th of June, sorry. And now we have 25K records on 7th of June. So now there are two ways to identify. So let's say, what is the customer ID of this 25K? 1,025,000, whatever, 0001 and up till 20,000, right? Then if we say that we want to pull every ID whose customer ID is greater than 1 million, then this is the logic, right? And this has nothing to do with the scoop. This is normal logic, right? Then this is called append. So now in incremental, now if we talk about scooping, in the incremental mode, we have two kinds of incremental mode. One is called append. Let me cover it in details now. One second. So when we talk about incremental, we have two types of incremental. One is append and one is last modified. Sorry, last modified. In append, it will bring everything which has greater than value of last value. Last value, in our case, in the customer example, it's customer ID. So everything which is greater than last customer ID, last cust ID, right? So when we talk about append mode, we have two columns. One is on which column we need to check the last value. Here it is cust ID. On which value we need to check the last value. Let's say 1 million, right? Simple, right? So this is called append mode, and these are the parameters. But now one more example in the customer database is, let's say if somebody updates his address, whenever you are updating your address, is your customer ID or bank account number changes? No, right? So in this case, but you have made the update. So in this case, but one thing changed. For example, your customer ID is 25,001. Your address is ABC, whatever. And on 7th of June, your 25,001 is the customer ID. You change your address to XYZ. Your customer ID remain as it is. If we go with the append mode, then will it come into existence? No, because the last value in this case, in this particular case, gonna be 25,001. So it won't fit into this case. But if we go for other mode, that's last modify, we can check. Here should be some date. On date which you have this address. So this address is valid till 6th June. This address is valid till 7th June. So if this, in this particular mode, in last modified mode, if we check the valid date, check column gonna be valid date, and last value gonna be 6th June. So anything which is greater than 6th June will come in last modified date. Am I making sense, guys? Okay. So this is as simple as that, you know. Now one more question arises, right? And I'll cover everything in one go. That who is maintaining this last value? Who is maintaining the last value? What is 1 million? What is 6th June? Every day, who is maintaining it? Is it manual activity? Like for example, today is 1 million. Tomorrow it's 1,025,000. After tomorrow it's 1,050,000. This last value. Who's maintaining it? It can be maintained manually, right? One guy we can hire, he will update one file, but is it industry-based solution? No. So ideally what we, in the incremental job, what we are doing, we are creating scoop jobs. Scoop jobs. So we are not running scoop, as of now, as I'm running, we are creating these scoop jobs. A scoop job internally will store this metadata. What this metadata is? Metadata is last value. Check column, last modified date, and number of things. And when you run the scoop command, it will update the last value command. Let me show you quickly. I have this command somewhere stored here. Okay. First of all, let me do one thing for you. Let me go here. This is the last topic, so don't worry. I will leave you now in 2 minutes. So when you see here, we have these many rows, right? So let me do one thing. I will delete everything which has category ID greater than 58. So it will delete 4 rows, right? So it will delete 4 rows. So if I run this select query again, so it has 58 rows, which is the real data, right? So now if I go to my command and if I pull that command using incremental load, so what I'm doing here, okay, so to create the jobs, right, I will say scoop jobs hyphen create. Scoop jobs hyphen create, then the job name, my first incremental job. So I'll say, I'll just change the name, my first incremental job, my first INC. So this is my job name. And then what that job is doing, that job is importing data from this database and number of things, and then from the table categories, right? And where it is importing like the same, almost same thing. But what I have changed here, please import the data from this table in incremental mode. In which mode? Append mode. which column you need to check? Check the category ID. What is the last value you need to check? Check the last value is 0. Okay, so let me copy it. Hopefully it will run. So now it won't run. It will just create the job for me, right? So it will just create the job for me and let it run. Okay, so see, it haven't run, right? So let's say if I want to see how many Scoop jobs have I in my system, so I'll say Scoop jobs -- list. So my job should be there. So the name of the job is my first INC. So I have created my first INC. So let's see. So I can see here my first INC job has been created here. So let's say if I want to execute this job, right? So what I'll say, -exec and then the job name, my _first _INC. Okay, I have run it. So it will run it, and I'll show you something then at the end. So it's the last topic. And now it is asking me for password now. So I'll put my password here, Cloudera. One more question, right? Till the time this job is running. So let's say you scheduled this job at 1 a.m. in the morning, and this job asked me for the password which I just entered, right? So who will wake up at 1 a.m. in the morning just to enter the password? And is there a way we can have this password stored somewhere so that we do not need to enter manually this password? Is my question making sense to you guys? So I entered the password manually, right? But if we talk about automation, we won't be doing anything manually. So yes, Scoop jobs will be, we have some option called create password file, which I'll show you in 2 minutes. We can create a password file, we can store that password file somewhere, and we can have the reference of that password file into this command. Meanwhile, that job is running. Let me show you here. Yeah, something like this. So we can have password _file here. This parameter. So what we are doing here, we are in normal scenario, I'm using -- password, and I'm putting password here. But if I want to have my Scoop job have password not from user but rather than from file, I will create one file with my password.txt. And meanwhile, let me open a terminal. Yeah, and then say ls-ltr. So I've created one password here, password file. And what's the password file name? It is my password.txt. So if I say vi my password.txt, see the password I have stored is Cloudera. Okay, and I will use this file in 2 minutes for you. So meanwhile, this job is running. So okay, so now everything is fine, right? Nothing very fancy happened, but only thing which is happened here is these 4 lines, last 4 lines. In fact, let me zoom it for you. View. Yeah, I think it should be better now. So see now. So what it did, updated data for job my first incorporate INC, the last line. So if I want to see what data is updated, right? So what I'll say, Scoop job -- my, then the job name, my first INC. So what it will show, it will ask me for the password again. Yeah, it asked. I'm putting my password here now. And now see the most important thing. So this is somewhere it has stored. Let me show you. It should store somewhere is the minimum or maximum value. Yeah, see this is the most important thing about this job. So it automatically stored the last value is 58. Now let me do one more thing quickly. I know I'm running out of time, but let me insert these few records. Okay, So I'll go here into MySQL. This is my MySQL, and I'll paste it all the records, and it recorded. So if I say select star from categories, so it will have few more records from these records I have just inserted, right? So let's say if I execute the job again, the same job, ideally what it should be doing for me, it should be just pulling those records, only 4 or 5 records, and it should be ignoring all the records. Okay, I'll show you in the job log. Yeah, see now. So let me show you here. Yeah. Did I mention anything? No, but it reads from the job metadata that, okay, last value was 58, the next value is 94, then I need to divide this data and all. So this is how the append mode will work. The same way last modified date will work. I won't be showing you, you can practice at home, but it's almost the same thing. Okay. So I think I have covered almost everything except this thing, right? So let me cover this thing as well. In fact, so let's say if I don't want to put my password, I want to read password from some password file. How I can do? I can say -- password -- and then the path of the file. This is my local directory. It's my local. So I'll say file, then /#, then the password file test. And let me run it somewhere else here. And let me maximize it. View, zoom in. And let me run it. So it will not ask me for password now, even though I didn't put the password. So it will run directly. Okay. So this is all for today's, guys. I'll stop the recording now.